Hello and welcome
theme song?
to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast. I'm going to do that again so we have a clean one for the audio. Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 39. I am Kurt, I'm drinking whiskey, and I was the victim of an attack today.
Wow, I'm Nightson,
calling it right out.
And Gigett, I'm telling you that we're keeping everything on that audio, so he doesn't get the clean cut.
I'm Oreztes, and I'm drinking a Bang Berry Nasty, I think is the official flavor.
I am Indo, and I'm drinking water?
Peasant.
I'm Gigett, and I'm totally drinking water.
Who puts ice in their vodka, really?
It's a Tom Collins, thank you very much. Tonight's spotlight topic will be, what do hit points mean? And we will get into that a little later in the show. But first, end of line, do we have any announcements?
We have a substantially a substantial amount of announcements. Actually, that's a lie. Insubstantial amount of announcements. Our upcoming streams. I see. First of all, I have to say, I see no Hitman in here. So has Hitman?
Hitman is taking a break at the very least.
Have you assassinated everyone? Is there no one left to murder at this point?
Yeah, it was. It took just over 7 billion paddles, but it was accomplished.
It took a trip to North Korea and nuclear codes, but he just got them all done in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
Pixel Scandal Side Quest is going to be have our next event, which is going to be Saturday, February 23rd at 9 a.m. That is going to be Cruise Ship of the Damned. That is going to be run by Dave Kazay, who was on the podcast before. You guys remember Dave?
Yeah.
He'll be running that February 23rd, 9 a.m., so catch that. Our next Dungeon World game will be Saturday, February 9th at 9 a.m. So next weekend, yeah. We'll be jumping back into Dungeon World.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
We had a very busy last few weeks, so
We're taking bets on who's going to get injured this time and postpone the game again.
I'm gonna guess it'll be Gigett with some other injury, if I have to be honest. That's my putting it on the pool.
That's even money right there.
I am still injured from the previous time we had to cancel, but I have learned to manage the pain with medication. So we will try very hard to go forward with next week's game. Kurt, I feel like before we go into what we're excited about, I need to address your statement at the beginning of the show.
Prove I'm wrong.
If you hadn't built your city in civilization so close to my capital, I wouldn't have felt that it was an act of war and felt like I needed to take back my territory. So I feel like you were the aggressor. There is a button in that game
that says declare war, so failing that, it was not an act of war.
Technically, I clicked the declare surprise war.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you knew it was
Which
coming.
makes you the bad guy.
I had you completely surrounded with military. How did you not know the surprise was coming, Kurt?
If anyone knows,
only the bad guy declares surprise war.
If anyone knows a good divorce lawyer, hit me in my DMs.
Anyway, so, hey guys, what are we excited about?
I'm excited about kicking your ass when we get back to that game.
You know, I put in our document here that I was excited for Oricon for you because you're going to be running a game for Happy Jacks on the Happy Jacks stream on twitch.tv/HappyJacks on
nukes.
Saturday the 16th at 1 p.m. But now I feel like I shouldn't tell anybody about your stupid game because you're being kind of an ass.
Well, you know what? I'll just tell myself then. I'm going to be running a game on Happy Jacks.
No, we're skipping it. Oreztes, talk about Final Fantasy.
I'm going to talk about it right now. I'm running a game on Happy Jacks stream at Oricon, live at Oricon. If you signed up, because the sign-ups are full, you might be in that game. So cool. That's great. I can't wait to see you.
Hey, Nightson, say boop.
Boop. I didn't realize you were planning. I could have timed it better.
All right. Anyway, so Oreztes, Please talk to us about Final Fantasy so Kurt and I
She
can be
threw an
quiet for a
ice
little
pack
while.
at me.
But
That
we're
is a declaration of war.
We're skipping another excitable thing, though.
We are. I missed something.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Yeah,
is.
that link right there. Yeah.
Please,
I
someone
mean, that's
talk.
that's
Other
that's
than
a
me.
that's
You just
a
wait
long
till I
way
get my
away
British
excitable
space
thing.
program.
Yes, show is off the rails tonight, Handor. Yes.
What were you
Yeah.
saying, Oreztes?
That is Handor. I thought that was Rando. You guys need to get different names.
Actually, what's more interesting to that is I thought the first two comments were rando, but the third one I clearly saw was Handor.
Yeah.
Okay, so please
So,
talk to us about the PS5.
Thing number one, Sony, one of the Sonys, did a copyright so they could have a new processor for their PS5 that is potentially going to be backward compatible to everything, like all the way back to PlayStation 1 games.
Amiga.
Probably, yeah.
You stick your Amiga cartridge in the back.
Yeah. So there's a blog, if you can read Japanese, that tells you all about it.
Let's assume I
Alternatively,
can't.
If you can navigate a Japanese version of Google far enough to find the translate to English button, that also works. But yeah, it tells you all about their shiny new processor that may potentially let you play PlayStation 1 and 2 games on a PS5, which would be amazing, and the most important console to ever come out in life, period. End of story.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then the Final Fantasy stuff, it's the Fan Fest, Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest. That's a lot of Fs. Happening in France. There's another one for you.
Ooh.
Um,
Fuck France because they're on. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
yeah.
France is on the right side of history on this one.
No, France is being a bitch in Civilization. We need to stop talking about Civ because this is getting completely off topic here.
Come down here, and we're gonna. There we go. All right. Yeah. So they announced.
I don't know what happened.
So they announced the Gunbreaker, a new class that uses Gunblade. It's like a gun that's got a blade on it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Starts at level 60. It's a tank. You get like stuff.
I
It's gonna be
feel
cool.
like
They're
maybe
gonna
End
announce
of Line
Dancer.
has some negative feelings about that.
It should have been Dancer. It should have been Dancer.
They still have a
They
class
should've
to
been-
announce.
Yeah, they should
They
have done
better be
Dancer
Dancer.
first. I'm just glad that I get to wait another month before I'm disappointed that Dancer is going to be a melee support DPS class like Bard is.
What's the problem with that? It's fine.
Bard is not a Bard. Final Fantasy XIV Bard is not a true proper support Bard.
They're
in
like
my
an
opinion.
archer.
Yeah, they're an archer that plays music, doesn't really do anything for anybody, and they use Peloton when you're not in combat.
I mean,
That's it.
it's pretty good though.
But does that Sand Dancer song play when you spin around?
No. I mean, so there's a plugin you can use for Act that will play that song whenever you play music if you want. Like
Nice.
whenever you play one of your songs, you could have it play any audio file you want. So you could do that.
Yeah.
All right, well.
But-
But
Yeah,
yeah,
we know
and,
what
no,
Luda's life is gonna play.
yeah, the guy who leaked basically everything about 4.5 and 4.4, 4.5 and the expansion has been 95 or 96% correct so far, and he said Dancer.
Awesome. Okay. I'm okay with this other shitty class then.
Oh, we're so glad that you're okay with it.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that Dancer was in the announcement and they didn't save Gunblade for the Japanese Fan Fest.
Well, it's
That's the one.
because every time they do one of these announcements, Yoshi P has to come out in costume of the class that they're announcing, and he didn't want to be accosted by coming out dressed up as a dancer in France.
Yes, Gigett did
Prop-
just reference Darude's sandstorm.
What?
The chat needed to know.
Well,
You know what? That's a
What?
question that Handor could have just asked had he decided to attend the podcast instead of being like, I don't want to be on the show because I'm a baby or whatever.
All right. Anyways, moving on. So, itch.io, which is a website for indie developers.
So wait,
of
no
all
one's even
makes
let me
and
talk. I
varieties.
put that one in.
Yeah, and which is why I was doing the prep work for it. So
Now he's declaring war.
Sorry,
Nightson,
Nightson, go ahead.
just explain me what itch.io is, because for the uninitiated, it sounds like it's a
horrible, horrible thing. Like
It's like a skin disease.
It sounds like something that WebMD would link to if you had like a rash.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But yeah, itch.io is a indie developer mecca for of basically any variety: video games, pen and paper, board games, what have you, anything. And it's weird that I had not heard of them at all up until a few months ago. They've been around forever, but they just keep popping up over and over and over. So Kurt was excited to talk about their new development. So go for it.
Yeah. So let me get the name here. I don't want to screw it up. So Lifo of itch.io went out and basically put out a call to tabletop creators because they're starting to notice that there are more and more physical products being sold on itch.io. Basically pen and paper games. People are selling their PDFs through that site. And so they reached out to the community. They created a forum post for how they can better serve the tabletop community. They're asking for people to come in and say, like, what kind of tags do you need to sort your products? What would help people better find you? What do you need what can we do to make itch.io better for tabletop games? And so this is a huge opportunity for people in the tabletop space to go in and actually help them develop the categorization and the way that itch.io processes and people find tabletop games on itch.io. So it's really exciting that they're doing that their admins are reaching out like that. And some cool people have already responded. I see there's some really good posts in this forum update. I will post I think someone maybe already put it in the chat. Nope. But I'll put it in the chat and I'll also put it in the show notes. If you're a tabletop creator and you'd like to go and give your feedback, this is a really good opportunity for people in that space to go and make itch.io the thing they want it to be. So that's really cool. You don't see that a lot from sales sites like this, so it's really neat.
Mm-hmm. I would link it in the chat, but I'm not here to help you tonight.
Yeah, I can't in good conscience support this for the sake of inclusivity, because they are focused too much on tabletop creators. And what about the creators of the rest of the tables?
Like the legs?
Yeah.
Dude, I just took a drink and I almost spit it all over my mic.
What about the leg creators?
What about the leg creators?
Did you say leg creators or lake raiders?
The lake raiders. What about the lake raiders? The people that raid lakes. Jesus.
Well, awesome. So let's move on to what we've played recently. We've played Civ, y'all. That's what we've played. Civ 6. That's what we were playing. And that has gotten very intense in the last half an hour.
Well,
we're all just sitting there bitching at each other for not clicking the button fast enough to end our turn. And then, bam, war breaks out 5 minutes before the show starts.
Yeah.
Surprise war.
A surprise
Definitely
war.
don't declare surprise war on your co-hosts right before the podcast.
Yeah.
It may affect the podcast.
It may affect the quality of the podcast, y'all.
Or do.
Or do.
Yeah, so, okay, what have the rest of you been playing?
That's all right. I'm Russian nukes. I've decided.
The guy who just realized he hadn't discovered wheel.
Wheels.
You know, I just...
We're
To be
sitting there and
fair,
he's like,
I wasn't-
you know how you get really far in the tech tree and you realize you need to build something way back that you didn't do? And he goes back and he's like, I never learned wheels.
I discovered the bank, but I don't have the wheel.
To be fair, I wasn't playing the game. I was just listening on Discord while you guys were playing. But it sounded like he has a pretty substantial water-based travel method. You don't really need wheels in the ocean.
You don't need wheels if you got boats. Boats don't need wheels. Take that. I've got more map than anybody, and I didn't even have wheels.
I know, we all wish that we could be friends with Kurt and learn his map skills, because he's got the whole map uncovered and we don't.
Maybe
Nightson and I barely learned at the end of the last time we played that our capital cities were like 6 hexes away from each other. And we had been playing for like 4 hours and just hadn't explored 3 more hexes out to go, oh, hey, buddy, you're right there.
But apparently you've been building up militia the whole damn time.
Okay, focus. Who's been playing Slay the Spire?
I played that.
Yeah,
Probably
so
Handor.
we were waiting for the magic ranked season to reset. So we ended up checking out Slay the Spire over the last week. And it is super, super fun. It is a roguelike deck builder that oddly becomes less fun the more you play it. Basically,
no.
The problem is it's RNG stacked upon RNG stacked upon RNG.
Yeah.
So, and then the more you play it, the more cards you unlock, which means it's even harder to build anything else resembling a good deck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's why you have to hit those bonfires and pay the 75 gold to take cards out.
Yep.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, super fun game. I definitely got my $15 out of it, or Handor's $15 out of it. I think he bought it for me.
It's really fun. I really dig it. Do we take calls during the show?
Yeah.
Are you going to call in, Handor?
It's called hit the join call button in
do
Discord.
It. You'll
It would
fuck up
really
the
fuck up the
overlay
thing.
and you will piss off
You'll be
Kurt
fired.
so hard.
Yeah, no, Slay the Spire was really fun. It's especially a great game if you've only got like 20 minutes to just sit down and play something, because it's single player, which I most of the games I play are MMOs. It's you can save your progress, which is rare for the kind of games I play, and the little fights are really fast. So like you can, progress through one of the rungs of the Spire pretty quickly and just get a quick game in. So
Cool. So who's been playing Anthem?
I've been
Endo,
playing it.
myself, Oreztes, and even
Rando.
hopped in last night, and we played for many, many hours. The BioWare put out a weekend demo, which is still open right now. The client is all of like 30 gigs, download super fast.
Yeah.
Um,
Not that bad.
she's reloading the sneak catapults. But it downloads super quick. So if you have any interest in checking it out, by all means. It is definitely worth your time. Right now, it's for. Do you start at level 10? Yeah, you start at level 10, and you can go to level 15, which honestly takes 2 or 3 hours.
Well, for now, yeah.
Yeah.
They've increased the speed that you level.
Oh,
through the
okay.
demo.
So they added that.
Yeah. And I
All
think
right.
they've increased the drops too, just for the sake of getting in and leveling up and getting some loot and
So
stuff like that.
I don't have enough information to really make a concrete decision on the game, because in one way of looking at it, I feel it is a more mobile, flashier Destiny, with worse gunplay.
I actually think Destiny's a little more immersive. We haven't seen enough of the game to say, but the limited scope, I gotta say, it seems kind of one-trick pony. After having done the content, like we only have a dungeon, the missions, and then one free run area. It's not a lot to do, really.
And then, but I do think the mobility makes it fun. The going, oh crap, and jetting across the room, super fun.
Yeah. It's,
Who
The
doesn't like
flight
jetting
once
across
you
the room?
the flight once you get used to it is amazing.
The
But in
swimming
the
is not.
The swimming is absolutely terrible, and
Oh,
dear
it's
God, go back to the
horrible.
drawing board, please. I'm begging you.
yeah.
But if that so that's one side, and I compare it to Destiny. I think it's better in some ways, worse in others than Destiny. I can't help but draw parallels to Warframe and go, it is worse in just about every way than Warframe.
Yeah.
Aside from you can't fly in Warframe.
I will buy this game. I will enjoy this game. 100% have to echo it. It's not nearly as good as Warframe. Like, you can for free go play Warframe, and it is an amazing game that does most of what this game does, and a lot more.
And the gunplay is amazing, and there's like 50 classes as opposed to the 4.
But this is fun. I'm enjoying
play
it.
Destiny, is what I'm hearing. I've never played Destiny.
Well,
I don't know.
Destiny's not bad. It's just not great. The first Destiny, when they finally got all their ducks in a row, 2 years later, it was apparently an absolutely amazing, incredible experience, which they did not learn anything from and released Destiny 2 in a very boring, lukewarm state, which got us out of the game super fast. Yeah, I could definitely see that, Handor, that Warframe's a little fast-paced. There are classes that take it a lot slower, though, that you can play a little bit more at a slower pace. It's just kind of, you got to find the right one. But yeah, that's what I've got to say on Anthem. I think I've seen enough to know that I probably am not going to spend $60 on it. Might spend $30.
Wait for it to go on sale.
This has kind of been my echo for the last couple of months on every new AAA release, because I've had it bite me twice now. And that is, so many AAA games lately have been releasing, and then 2 weeks later, they will cut 30-40% off their price. Yeah. So
which is unfortunate.
I don't need to play the game first week. I got too much shit to do as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on a high note, we got to finally play Gloomhaven last weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Which is super exciting.
Gloomhaven is crazy fun.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
For anyone who's ever played the old Hero Quest from like the 90s.
Oh man, Hero Quest was amazing.
No. Gloomhaven is everything Heroes Quest should have been. I think it's the guy in Shut Up and Sit Down said it is what you imagined Heroes Quest was.
I liked Heroes Quest.
Yeah, no, Heroes Quest was absolutely amazing for a board game in the 90s. It really was.
Yeah, it was how I introduced people to Dungeons and Dragons that had no interest in playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then I got them to play 1.5 or second edition. Or whatever.
Yeah. But Gloomhaven is all of that. It's the incredibly versatile, lots of little pieces and things happening, lots of customization. Super fun.
The card mechanic is a little fiddly until you really get familiar with your deck. So Gloomhaven uses, for the characters, because you have a specific character that you play, and they go through the different adventures and they get better over time. But the characters all their abilities are basically a deck of cards. And I don't even know if it's safe to call it a deck, because you don't actually draw. You just hold all the cards in your hand.
I was playing the Barbarian and I got 10 cards.
Yeah, so you have all these cards in your hand, and each one has a top half of the card and a bottom half of the card. And when you do your turn, you do it in secret. So you choose 2 of your cards and you put them face down, and then everybody flips at the same time. And then when it comes around to your turn, you choose 1 top and 1 bottom. So you have a little bit of choice there, right? In case someone goes before you and does something that, would invalidate your previous plan. But you're also going to lose 2 of those options for later in the round, which is the top and bottom that you don't use. So you kind of have to decide, which of these am I not going to need for 5 rounds, and which are going to be best used right now. So there's some weird fiddly bits there where you want to choosing the cards you're going to go with for your turn can be really time consuming, at least for me. My turn always took longer than everybody.
I think the biggest thing is, and I definitely have to break myself from this, and I know you are a victim of this as well, which is analysis paralysis, which is just too many choices. I have to make the optimal choice. And you can definitely fall down that path. But if you are the kind of person who just rolls and says, this sounds like it'll work, 9 times out of 10 you're good.
Yeah, I mean, when we played, I was on limited talking allowance, so our child played. He and I played together, and so because we were playing together, we really couldn't overanalyze what we were gonna do. It was just kind of like, let's do that top and this bottom, go. And it actually was really fun because, like, we'd get to our turn and sometimes the monsters wouldn't be in the spot they were when we put everything down, or, like, you guys would have killed something or maneuvered something in a way that it didn't work out anymore. But you still had, I mean, if this top and this bottom that you'd planned to do wasn't working, you could always do this top and this bottom and see if those worked instead or whatever. And so it was really fun.
And one thing that adds to it nicely is the table talk is limited to vague comments. You can't say, you're not allowed to say, move here. I'm going at 13 in the round, so move here so I can attack that. Which, if that was in it, rounds would take 10 times as long.
Yeah.
Well, you'd end up with the commander problem, right? Where one person knows how to beat the game and they tell everyone else what to do.
Right.
Instead, you end up with pseudo in-character conversations where you're like, I'm going to go really fast. Like, I'm going to get him, to decide to say, like, I'm going to act early in the round, or I'm going to kill that guy, right? Like, you can kind of say that stuff, but it's supposed to be sort of vague and, possibly in character. Which is kind of neat. I mean, especially it was funny, I looked on Reddit, and one of the posts in the Reddit is just, does anybody ever, like, RP their guys? And I'm like, oh, look at him, figuring it out.
Yeah, Oreztes was playing the healer, and I would be like, ow, I'm hurting, like, a lot.
Tinker.
Like, I'm bleeding. Yeah. Like, I'm bleeding a lot. There's, like, lots of blood.
And half the time I'd have to be like, okay, guys, hold on, I have an idea. And that would be like, Nightson, please don't go on 7.
You're like, hey, everybody, I need you to go really slow.
Yeah, I got an idea.
And so we're like, all
Hold
right,
up,
high
everybody.
numbers.
I got a plan. All right, what are you going to do?
Yep.
Yeah. It was
But
fun.
yeah.
We should play it again soon.
Well, and
Yes.
the art and the world is really really evocative. Like one of the character I played is a verminling, which you're basically like a rat folk type of thing, but you look, I don't know, the heads aren't, the heads are like really round, and they have like these crazy toothy smiles.
Oh yeah, you're playing the heroes, but you don't look hero-y. You look crazy.
Yeah, the characters are really cool, and the art styles are unique, and so it's not like I'm an elf or whatever. So it's all really unique.
Yeah. Yeah, but we will have more updates on Gloomhaven the next time we play.
Yeah.
Kurt, you want to give us a quick rundown of how your trophy game went this morning?
Oh yeah, I got to play Trophy in the Gauntlet today. Jason Cordova ran it. Trophy is a story game of horror. It's a fantasy horror story game about adventurers treasure hunters heading into a forest that doesn't want them there. So you play these you play the people that are going to run into the forest. So you're like a farmer or what did I play? Like a sellsword or a noble or whatever. And you're running in there you want to get treasure. And part of the character generation, it's all really quick, and it's sort of just story prompt type stuff. You have a drive, which is why your character wants to go in and get the treasure and get back. So you have a reason that your character wants to get in and get out. But as players, you know that all of the characters are either going to die or end up irrevocably changed. And probably insane, because it's based on Cthulhu Dark, so there's a lot of like psychological horror to it. The forest is, slumbers no longer and, yearns for your destruction kind of thing. And it sort of takes over your mind or assaults you with monstrosities. And the way that the game works, the mechanics are really simplistic. But they really fed the story. So it's a mix. I haven't played Cthulhu Dark before, so I'm not sure what it takes from Cthulhu Dark, but it uses the resolution mechanic from Blades in the Dark, where you build a dice pool of D6s and then you roll them all and you keep the highest one. And it's really rare that you get a lot of dice. So if you're trained in something, which like your background or your job basically give you like 3 or 4 proficiencies or things that you're skilled in. So like as the sellsword, I had like athletics, weapons, defense, and as a forlorn lover, which was my background, a forlorn romantic, I had despair. I was skilled in despair. And so there were a lot of times when, like, I had to pull someone out of a gulch because they had fallen in, right? That's athletics. So I got an extra white die, or light die. And every time you roll, you build these couple of light dice, and you get very few of those. And then you can add on dark dice for, like, if you do a ritual, or if you you want to, like, tempt fate or risk bodily harm, you get these dark dice. And the reason you have these dark dice is whenever you roll, if your dark die is higher than your light dice, then it increases your ruin score. And your ruin is kind of like your sanity score. So if you ever get to 6 ruin, you basically become you join the forest, right? And you can turn on the party. But when you get to 5, you can start trying to lower it by doing things to help the forest. So basically you have these, like, the first few scenes, you're definitely on the same team and you're working to get to the ruins and find the treasure. And then about halfway through, people start hitting that 5 ruin mark, and they're like, and the ways that you can lower your ruin score is by doing things that hinder the adventurers, destroying treasure, preventing rituals from happening, which is sort of like the superpowers that the players get. And so you sort of turn on each other, which fits with the type of story, this, like, fantasy horror story where, like, oh no, I'm possessed right now, I'm gonna turn on you and just do things, but you want to make it look like an accident. Because the game specifically tells you, like, don't do something obvious like just hinder them, like make it look like an accident, or make it look like it's something else. So it's like, oh, I destroyed this, but it was, you accidentally drop it, but really you're just trying to hinder the party. And then you can lower that ruin score, so you're not, because once you get to 6 ruin, you lose your character. Yeah, very much like Betrayal at House on the Haunted Hill.
Except apparently everyone's evil.
Yeah, but everyone could be the villain if they hit that level, and it was really good. The game specifically, this game had really good pacing. Like, we all just sort of nailed the pacing. A lot of times, because it is a story game, there's a lot of shared control of the narrative and a lot of leading questions by the GM, because it is a GM'd game. To sort of fill out the world and what it means. And I've seen a lot of times in games like that, you'll throw out your leading questions, but then you don't pick up, like, you don't actually get into roleplay. You throw out the question, the player says what they think, like, it looks like, and then because now we've spent some time in that area, you kind of kick ahead, right? But you never get that scene of actual role-playing with the other characters. And this had a really good mix of, like, scene setting and leading question and, like, narrative questions versus actually RPing with the other characters in, at camp or trying to get to find the ruins or whatever. Yeah. So it was really fun. Jason's an awesome GM, and the other players were really fun to play with. So it was cool.
So in that game, the ruin mechanic is kind of the, like, hit points of that game.
Yeah, I would say that is sort of a representation as we transition. That is definitely the hit points. Oh, I want to say where people can find it before we move on to our topic. You can find Trophy in Codex Dark 2, which you can find on Drive-Thru RPG, or you can get by joining the Gauntlet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that does kind of move us into our spotlight topic of tonight, which is, what do hit points mean? So, Nightson, do you want to kind of take it away?
Yeah, sure. So a couple weeks ago, we were talking about high-level characters, and kind of, for that matter, that to a normal person, they, like, in D&D, a 10th level fighter has 100, 120 hit points, potentially, versus a peasant, which might have 2. Which is an interesting concept. Like, how do you see that? How is that portrayed? Like, does this fighter somehow have the ability to take 100 stabs in the gut?
Right.
Which is always something that sat kind of odd with me, growing up, that hit points were this arbitrary measure. And especially in something like D&D, where you don't have any degradation whatsoever. You have 2 states. I am at 1 or more, or I am at 0. And so I kind of figured it'd be interesting to kind of discuss that and kind of some of the other methodologies how games deal with the arbitration of hit points.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that your analogy is irrelevant because you could stab anybody in the gut 100 times if you do it fast enough.
But does
that is
each
fair.
hit equal 1 hit point though? Each stab, hit point.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of discussions like talking about like specifically D&D hit points about what they mean, right? As because hit points are an abstraction, right? They're a measure of how long your character can press on without falling unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of people say, oh well, the first half of your hit points is just you getting tired from having to dodge or scrape, little bumps and bruises. And then, maybe if you take a big hit that takes off a good chunk of your hit points, maybe that's actually a wound, right?
Well, one thing I saw, an old Matthew Colville video he put out, I don't know, sometime last year. He actually did a kind of talking about hit points. And one of the things they discussed was hit points are not physical prowess.
Mm-hmm.
They are tricks. Like the rogue in your group, he takes a big hit. No, he didn't get hit. He dodged out of the way or threw a bookcase at them, but it, tired him out.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the mage threw up a magical barrier, but he can't do that again. So that kind of concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen that a lot as a way of dealing with the whole, I'm at 1 hit point, I'm fine, now I'm unconscious. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people describe hit points, like when you lose hit points, as little cuts and stabs and things, and it can seem a little silly when you get hit and lose 5 hit points, and then you lose 5 more hit points, and then you lose 5 more hit points. Like, how many times can you say it was a glancing blow, right? Like how many times can you say
paper cuts does it take to get to the center of a rogue?
Yeah. So I mean, there are good ways to handle it. Like I like the idea that it's that was. You're only going to be able to use that feint so many times before they figure out how to counter it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how a lot of people describe it. Like a lot of people see hit points and think, oh, this is the amount of damage that I can take before I'm unconscious. And I think that comes down to people playing video games, right?
Right.
Because
I think it'd be interesting though to actually play like a traditional D&D game though, in which you throw in the story game bullshit of why didn't that kill you?
Right.
You just took that. You have 30 health. You took 15 damage from this ogre hitting you. Why didn't you die? Explain to me what that 15 hit point meant to you.
Well, Fictive has a good point that HP as damage only works in a game where characters have low HP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, because once you get to the higher level and you've got a lot of HP, you don't really care as much the little damage here and the little damage there and the,
Mm-hmm.
Well, hit points took I don't remember when, but I'll ask you guys because you'll know better. When did hit points take the turn that it did? Because it used to be your hit points were based on on dice back in the old school D&D.
It's still that way in 5th.
Mm-hmm.
They went away with it in 4th. There weren't hit dice in 4th. But then they went
came
back
back
to hit
in
dice.
5th.
Okay,
No,
so-
I'm talking about like to one shot. Like it used to be like this is the amount of dice a monster has in comparative to the amount of hit points that a particular hero would have. And they use that comparison to tell how many hit points that a character would have. So like you'd get like 1d6 per level or something like that.
Yeah, they still do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fourth. So the difference is in 3rd edition, they hand waved it a little bit to say if you didn't want to roll and just get an average value, just say half die plus 1.
Mm.
In 4th, they just got rid of the rolling. I just said you have half die plus 1 as your hit points. I think they went back to it in 5th.
Yeah, they went back to it in 5th.
I actually never made a character in 4th without the character builder. So I don't actually even know how to do the math to build a character in 4th edition because I always use the character builder.
That's funny because I started with 4th and I only ever made characters with the character builder, and the first person I ever saw with a paper character sheet that they made by hand was Nightson. Mm-hmm. And it was I had been playing at the library with these guys for a while, and then Nightson shows up with like, oh, this is our old friend who moved away and he's back to play games with us, and then you pull out this handwritten character sheet and I was like, Holy crap, he knows so much about the game.
You can do math to make this happen?
What? Yeah, I was super confused. But I think the big problem, the reason a big part of the reason that people confuse hit points and damage, right, and physical wounds, is because you roll to hit and then you roll for damage.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And damage reduces your hit points. So the game is telling me if I hit you, I must have hit you with a weapon, right?
Right.
And then if I did damage, I must be physically harming you. And so if it was phrased differently, like if there was one roll for hit and damage, or if damage was just called damage wasn't called damage but something else, right? Some other,
Like a wound.
or anything that didn't directly correlate with physical pain, right? I think that's why you get a lot of the hit point loss is physical damage.
Right.
It's funny though, because if you look at all of our traditional fantasy media, like watch Lord of the Rings, there's not a single person in that entire movie set that gets hit more than once.
True.
If they get hit and they bleed, they're dying
Yeah.
shortly thereafter. Every single character, every single time.
Yeah.
Right.
Aragorn broke his foot kicking a helmet. Just
That is true, yeah. and so
Explain that.
it's weird that all D&D is basically Tolkien.
Yeah.
You know, it's moved a
Right.
little bit away from that over time, but it all started Tolkien.
Right.
And then it completely the hit point concept is
HP
oh no, it was
also.
definitely more than one hit point.
he suffered a wound.
Yeah,
At
and
least
it's
three.
definitely weird that it's got that arbitration that rolls that way. And so we kind of move into the next of what is the next step. You know, wounds is something you see in a lot of games. Savage Worlds uses it. Hell, some versions of D&D use it, in which you have reached some point of damage, you have a penalty associated
Right.
with it.
Which I kind of prefer that, like the wounding way of doing things, because it makes more sense to me. Like with Savage Worlds, where they try to hit you and they didn't hit you, or they tried to hit you and they did, and now you have a dislocated shoulder, or you have a laceration on your wrist, and you can only really take 3 wounds till you're incapacitated and can't fight anymore because you've had too many wounds. And I don't know, that just, to me, that makes more sense than having like a big number that you're slowly chinking down. Like thematically, it makes more sense.
But in Savage Worlds, I call toughness hit points.
Yeah, that is. Truth be told, that is kind of the way it runs. Armor is your hit points, armor and toughness.
It's true.
The downside about a wound-based system, though, is it is a slippery slope where your first wound means that every subsequent wound is going to come faster because you are less able to fight. You are less able to do the things that keep you from not taking more damage.
Right.
Right.
True.
Well, yeah, in most of those systems, you start taking mechanical disadvantages. Like you start losing -1 to all of your rolls or whatever for
Right.
how many wounds you have.
Yeah. But in my experience, though, in systems like that, you never just do one wound. If you're wounded, period, you're taking a bunch at once.
To me, though, that makes more sense, though, because like in the real world, if you were to get hurt, you would then be more likely to get hurt again because you're in pain and it's harder to, move around or dodge whatever the thing is. So it just, I don't know, the wound system just makes more sense to me. What?
Is that why you're always getting injured? You never recovered
Yeah,
from your
I've never
first
recovered from the previous wound when I get the next one, and it's easier to get the next wound because I already
It
have
does-
a wound.
The wound system does make a lot more sense than health points or hit point. I have 50 hit points. I am in the same condition at 1 hit point as I am at 50 hit points.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense. With Savage Worlds, it affects you, so I think it is better.
I mean, other games do that too. Shadowrun has every 3. I don't know. Is it harm? Like, what do you call the damage in?
Um,
They're not hit points.
boxes, condition
Box-
boxes.
Yeah, I think they call them boxes. So
They're literally
every 3 boxes you fill, you take a -1 to your die pools.
Yeah.
And you can take so many. You can fill so many boxes. So
What's that system that I really super hate? The initiative system on?
Wild Talents.
Wild
Talents
Talents.
does a pretty good
Yes.
thing with the wound system because it's got the different like hit locations on the body, and so it's it's like, oh, I lost an arm because I got hit in the arm too many times, or the leg, or it all kind of flows over into your torso, and eventually you're incapacitated.
Isn't that the one that basically has mech hit points?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
your
kind of.
body your body has hit point boxes in all of your extremities.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
say
but the rest of the boxes don't matter because in Wild Talents everybody takes a hard die and it's always a 10 and you just hit people in the face left and right anyways.
So I actually one of the house rules for Wild Talents, if you're a Wild Talents fan, is to change hard dice from 10s to 7s so that it's auto body shots. Because that is one flaw in the system is there's a thing in that where you basically have dice that you don't roll that are auto a number, and they're default auto 10, and so if it's an attack, it's always a headshot. And there's only 4 boxes in your head, and so if you have enough hard dice, you just auto kill everybody.
Yeah.
Because you're auto shooting them in the head, which doesn't really fit with how, like, if you
We could
were
be playing John Wick.
Well, yeah, right. But nobody gets 100% headshots. Like, it's always body shots. If you're an expert marksman, you are not taking headshots because it's riskier. You're more likely to miss. You're gonna shoot
John
for the body.
Wick.
See John Wick, right? If you're John Wick, sure.
Let's face
Right?
it, there are a lot of problems with Wild Talents. The hitboxes is a cool thing, but the hard dice and the initiative system suck.
I love the initiative system. You're wrong.
No, you're wrong.
Now, I will say another one that does
Hate
it
the
really well.
initiative system.
I hate the initiative system. It's awful. Sorry, that's not what we're talking about tonight, but
One that I really liked, again with a flawed system though, Fate. Fate does hit points incredibly well. Where you
love
have
Fate
the
hit points.
here's the damage I can take without anything bad happening. Your soak or what I don't remember. What
It's stress.
Stress. And then as soon as you go beyond your stress, then you have an ever growing level of severity of conditions that are, this will be gone in 20 minutes. This will be gone after a couple days.
This needs to go to the hospital.
You're going to the hospital if you want to get rid of this.
Yeah.
which actually Kurt's Lighthearted System, it's not exactly the Fate system for damage, but it has that conditions thing where you take conditions in different areas and you fill up all your condition boxes and then you're fucked. But I like that idea of putting conditions on yourself, like I have a broken leg, so now I'm slowed, or what, adding those conditions, and then eventually you're like, all right, guys, you gotta take me to the hospital. That's it. I can't. Like, I'm septic. We gotta,
This is a one shot. Gigett loses both her arms.
Well, and I mean
that has happened in games. I've lost my left arm in no less than 3 games.
Yep. It's always
Separate
an arm.
campaigns.
You lose an arm in those games every time we do one of those.
Always
where there's like
fucking lose
an
arms.
actual target.
Always. I
Call shot
always
arm.
lose arms.
Well, one of my favorite things about conditions is it forces you to think about it narratively, right? What actually happened that's hindering me? Is it a broken wrist? Did I lose my arm? Did I get shot in the gut? And rather than having like, oh, you have an injury, you have a -2 to vigor or whatever, right? Like, it is, if this would affect you, it does, right? Like, you were shot in the stomach. Should that affect you or not right now? And different games have different ways of handling that. But
because if you say broken leg, or let's say broken arm, you get a minus. Let's say it's just a -1 penalty to all you're doing. Great. But you're not going to be hanging from a rope. That's just a failure.
Yeah, you're not climbing that rope.
Well, I think that's a big difference between doing hit points and having a wound, because a wound is a specific spot on your body, where hit points is just like, oh, I'm down to 3 hit points. Guess we got to heal me up. But it's like, where is the damage to your body that those hit points took, right?
Yeah. Which I think is why you need almost a story game bullshit reason for it to be high fantasy, what they mean. I threw up a magical shield. That's why it didn't kill me.
Right.
Everyone
Yeah.
dies in one hit in this world. You just are really good at not.
Taking that
You're,
last hit.
you're a ranged caster. I hit you in the eye. You lost an eye. You now have a -2 to shoot now because it's hard for you to fucking see. Like,
Right.
it makes narrative sense that this is what happens and this is the reaction of the consequence.
Well, I mean, if that's the case with the hit points and we're doing high fantasy and your cleric is in the group who literally has powers granted by their god, maybe you did get stabbed through the gut and you're bleeding out in the middle of the battlefield and the cleric's like, no, you're fine now. I patched that up with my god magic. So that's your, okay, I'm better. I have it's a little sore because I just took a great sword through my gut. But I'm okay now. So yeah, that's my hit points. Yeah. So I mean, you could justify it.
Yeah. Well, the god magic thing works a lot better in the earlier editions, but 4th and 5th, where they moved to
warlords.
Well, no, I mean that they purposely encourage everyone to use healing surges in, during rests. People are healing themselves, so it kind of makes the narrative sense that no, you're just, resting and getting back your tricks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You were tired from dodging all those things that didn't hurt you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I do narratively like the wounds where you talk about the fact that you've lost an arm and you can't shoot anymore because you only know how to shoot with your right hand and your left arm's gone because a zombie ripped it off or something. Like that just to me narratively makes more sense to talk about where the wound was, what happened to you, and why you have some negative to you now because of that wound.
So are we saying that I'm just gonna ask. It seems like most of us agree that hit points are kind of antiquated at this point. There are better ways to handle damage than
they're an abstraction that is not explained well in the text. It is not explained, like they are. As a war game, hit points are great, right? If you had a troop, like if you had 100 dudes and that 100 dudes had 100 hit points and I fire a cannon at your 100 dudes and I kill 10 of them, you've lost 10 hit points, right? Well, now that you're one guy, that 100 hit points doesn't make sense anymore because like there's no explanation for what that means anymore. And so the text of D&D does not tell you how to use hit points in a way that makes sense without it just being an attrition system for how long it takes to disable your character.
Yeah.
Well, hit points
in a game that's meant on immersion, it's not immersive. It actually breaks immersion because it makes no narrative sense in the game.
Well, by the time you get to hit points, your immersion's already broken in that scene because you have to get through armor class to get 2 hit points.
Armor class is another abstraction that does not equal
first level of abstraction.
Yeah. But at that point, you have to ask yourself a question: is this mechanic fast enough that I can play the board game part of this game without taking away from the story part of this game? Right? Because if D&D, if you had a wound system where you could take so many injuries to different parts of your body, and armor was what is it called? When it reduces damage.
Oh, just DR.
Mitigation.
If armor was damage reduction, and to hit rolls had nothing to do with armor class, and it was all just about how fast you could stick and move. Like, sure, but now how many steps of combat do I have to get through to find out if you were able to hurt me?
Right.
Right? So it does serve a purpose of, does it move the thing along? Does it move the game along?
So, I mean, that means that when Oreztes slapped the dragon and crit, that the dragon was so surprised that this little human was trying to slap him, that's why he was able to do damage to him, because...
Yeah.
I didn't actually do damage to him,
his face.
Yeah, he was like the arrogance of this
It
little
was
guy.
psychological trauma.
Yeah. I dealt 1 psychic damage.
Well, speaking of dragons and narrative hit points, though, you have one thing that always comes up in these kind of discussions is the 12 hit point dragon of Dungeon World.
Yeah.
Which tends to freak out people who go, what do you mean a dragon has 12 hit points? Mm-hmm. But in that system, hit points have narrative armor.
Right.
where you have to come up with a reason you're allowed to touch the hit points.
In Dungeon World?
Yeah.
It's because you rolled 2d6. And then you say, I hit. Because I got a 10.
Right.
So...
Yeah.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost track of the conversation. I just had my drink annexed by a rival nation.
Real good whiskey, guys.
That's your primary export.
I'll be filing a formal complaint with the UN.
Yeah. But no, like I agree. I like the idea of, you know, explaining where your wounds come from, but mechanically I am a big fan of the hit location and boxes, like to track wounds and status, you know, debuffs and stuff like that. Like hit points, I have 1,000 hit points. Like, okay, that's great. Like even Wizards knew that hit points were getting out of hand when they came up with like rules for massive damage. Because that would have never been a rule if they would have never sat down one day and been like, you know what, we just don't have enough ways to kill fighters.
So, well, but that goes back. That is a very good point, because if you think about it, like in D&D, everything has hit points. Like a door has a certain amount of damage you have to do to get through the door. You can't say that the door was really good at jumping out of the way, and that's why you didn't hit it very hard, and it only took 2 damage or whatever. Like, it's, you know, it's like we talk about it when it comes to characters, but then also in D&D they give objects hit points that, you know, can't put up a barrier spell or whatever. When I throw this cask at the ground and it didn't shatter, is it because I didn't throw it hard enough, or is it because it threw up its whiskey shield spell on its cask?
Or you know, if you do 2 hit points to a door, you know, you might have chipped it, you might have put your axe through it, but it's a tiny little hole.
True.
It's not going to accomplish a damn thing.
Right.
Yeah, that
takes 8 more damage for the door to go unconscious.
But the door can't be exhausted because you.
Well, that's the thing. A door's not allowed to take a short rest, so it can't ever heal the hit points back.
Yeah,
that's true.
It requires a carpenter to come and fix it.
Orcs are good carpenters, I've heard.
Yep.
I'm sorry, guys.
So in summary, hit points are poo. Armor class is also poo.
Parry is for bitches.
Parry is for bitches. Toughness are hit points. Use hit locations and boxes for everything. Adopt those into your games from now on.
I gotta say though, growing up in second edition D&D, there was a book, Combat and Tactics, which introduced hit locations, introduced like wounds and all that, and it very quickly made me realize that wounds and hit locations are at the player's detriment.
Yeah,
because
it's like critical failures.
Yeah. Anything in which you are rolling more dice than because the monsters die, get replaced with more monsters, inevitably, you're going to lose an arm or both.
So then I think the preference for hit points or wounds would come down to the type of player that you are. You know, the more of a role player you are, the more you like to immerse yourself in what's happening to your character, the more you would lean towards hit locations and wounds, and the more you really enjoy the like combat simulator part of like 4th edition, or, you know, then hit points would be more fun because it's more interesting to figure out how you can mitigate that damage and maneuver through the fight.
Yeah, I mean it's what kind of experience do you want to have, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to manage resources, or do you want to manage a narrative thing that happened to you? Like, do you want your character to have changed in some way, right? Like the consequences from Fate, your character has changed, right? Like they have something on their sheet that is different that then, you know, 30 hit points down of 50 versus I want a quick way to tell if I am alive or dead while I mow through the goblins.
Yeah.
How long did that in our Fate game, or Dresden Fate game, how long did our disciple have a broken leg and wandering around with a cast on? Like, how many games? It was like 3 or 4 games.
It was like 3 or 4 games. And in one game, I had like rolled an ankle or had like a broken ankle or something. And it was seriously like 4 or 5 games. And by the time we got to like the 3rd or 4th game, I was like, okay, Kurt, come on. Like, she's been to the doctor. It's got to be feeling better by now, right? And he's like, no, that's a long-term wound. Like, that's going to still take another game or 2 before it's healed. So, like, you know, it's like, even though you might be the kind of player that enjoys it adding to the narrative, you also kind of fuck yourself at some point where you're like, God damn it, where's my hit points? Can I find a cleric, please? This is driving me crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting.
There's a game, I've mentioned it to you guys before, if you remember, called Aces and Eights. And as far as I'm aware, that game does not use hit points. So, like, what it is Aces and Eights originally is a cowboy setting. And in the book, there's a bunch of silhouettes of, you know, characters in different poses, like kneeling down with a rifle and just, you know, just different poses, standing there like you're going to do a showdown, like a draw, you know, a duel in the middle of the street or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it uses what's called a shot clock. And it's basically a transparency piece of paper with a dartboard on it. It's got like a circle with rings and like it just looks like a dartboard. Mm-hmm. So basically what it is your character's fighting a dude. And so you find the silhouette of the dude that you're fighting and you put it on the table. And then you take this transparency and you put the bullseye where you're aiming your shot on this silhouette. And then you draw a card. And so the card, the suit and the number and the suit of the card determines where you land on this dartboard. So like if you get an ace of spades, it's like all the way up at the top in the middle. So that's where your shot goes. So if the card that you draw hits the target based on like where you place that target, like if you get an ace, it's the bullseye. So you hit right where you're aiming. There's no hit points in the game. There are tables. And so you reference the table based on where you were aiming and where you actually hit. So you could be aiming at somebody like, I'm going to aim at their gun to disarm them, but you draw a wrong card, you shoot them in the face. And it's like, oops, my bad.
Still accomplished your goal.
Yeah.
So I want to
say... Surprise war!
Yeah. So I just want to say that game, that system would be really interesting in a game about dueling pistol duels, right? Where it's the central tension is who shoots first and do they hit, right?
And
because
you have 2 of those ever.
Yeah, right. So you're if you get yourself into a duel, bam, that is super interesting. But if you're just like caught behind behind the barn and you're more interested in can we get away with the sack of cash that we stole from the bank before the sheriffs shoot us,
right?
Like, and you have to fire 10 times, like that is going to take forever, right? It really depends on how you want the game to play. If you want one shot to be really interesting, that's going to do it, right? Yeah. But if you're not putting the weight and the narrative into it, and it doesn't feel important, if each shot does not feel important narratively, then that is going to feel like a waste of time as you go through the game. Yeah. Like, it's really cool, and I would love to play that game like where it's one-on-one, we're in a duel. Something that L5R does is there are different rules for if you are just fighting with swords or if you are in an Iojitsu duel. Like if you challenge someone to a duel. Like you go into bullet time and you're like judging exactly how the person is standing and trying to pick the right stance to counter and doing all this crazy stuff. But that's not what happens if you just get in a fight in the street, right? So it has these 2 different sets of rules for what's important right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't help but when we talk about Wild West games, thinking about the game we played where Oreztes had a backpack full of bunnies. that if they were green, they exploded, and if they were red, they didn't. And that was kind of like a red light, green light, whether or not you petted them, they would explode kind of thing. And so every time someone brings up Wild West, I always think about the backpack of bunnies.
Yeah. That was a weird game because they were like quantum.
It was a weird game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, so like I would put a happy, friendly bunny in a house with a bad guy and close the door and then go outside and slap his friend, and then the bunny inside would enter a rage and start attacking people. And be like,
wasn't there a way to convert the bunnies too or something? Like that?
They were all linked.
They were all linked.
So they were all either mad or happy at the same time.
So we would put a bunch of happy bunnies in a backpack and then walk around and leave them places and then slap the one bunny he had left to piss it off. Yep. So that all the other bunnies that he had dropped off would freak the hell out.
Yeah.
That was a crazy game.
That
I was playing
bizarre.
an angel in that game. That was a very strange game.
Did we ever in character find out you were an angel?
Nope.
I think some of us did.
I think in the last game.
Yeah, my character never did because I got the bunnies from the devil, and had I known that there was an angel, I probably would have given you a bunny.
I missed our whole deities talk, but because that was my topic. But I actually wanted to talk about the Wild West game where I played an angel because of the whole deities talk. That's what I wanted to talk about. But we'll have like all the topics we didn't get to talk about episode at some point.
But going back on topic, red-eyed bunnies do hit point damage.
They do hit point damage. Because that was a D&D game, right?
It was Wild Talents.
Oh, it was Wild Talents. That's right.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was a hack of Wild Talents that the person was calling Snore.
Oh, right. Yes.
That
was an acronym for something.
Yeah, it was an acronym. It was Wild Talents, but with D12s instead.
And a hit location die.
And you had a hit location
which was
die
very neat
to see where you hit.
Because you could hit them in the crotch.
Yeah. I like hit locations. There should be more games that uses hit locations.
Yeah, that was super fun.
Well, we got pretty far off of hit points. What do we think?
That's okay. Thoughts? I was going to wrap us up here. I was going to ask, does anybody have any final thoughts on hit points, wounds, attrition, all of this kind of topic that we've discussed tonight? Does anybody have any final thoughts?
Don't really, but I feel like I should drag this show on for as long as possible so you guys don't go back to Civ. And
so you could save your marriage?
Yeah. I have a feeling this could potentially be the last episode of Pixel Scandal.
I think we'll be fine.
The next one should be filmed from a cheap motel room.
In the end, England will prevail.
Here's the question. Which one of us would be filming from the cheap hotel room?
Kurt.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
I guess he's over there. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in tonight. We had a lot of fun. I'm sorry if I was super silly and off topic. Kurt, would you like to tell people where they can find us on the internet?
I sure would, Gigett. If people want to find us, don't go to our website because it's we're doing some stuff to that. There may be so if you're a fan of heading to pixelscandal.com to find out more about this show, you may notice an outage in the near future. We're working on some domain transfer stuff. We hit some hiccups, and so we're gonna have to spend a little time on support. But that does not mean that any of our other social presences are down. So you can go to YouTube and search Pixel Scandal and find back episodes of this show. You can head to iTunes, Google Play, or any podcatcher of choice to find audio issues of this show.
At this
by
point,
searching
at 9
Pixel Scandal.
p.m. on February 2nd, our website is still up.
Yeah. You can also head to twitter.com/pixelscandal, instagram.com/pixelscandal,
Patreon.
facebook.com/pixelscandalshow, because we couldn't get Pixel Scandal there. And of course you can email us if you want to, pick a topic or ask us questions. You can email us pixelscandal@gmail.com. And if you would like to support the show, you can do that by heading to twitch.tv/pixelscandal. Give us a follow, give us a sub, or head over to patreon.com/pixelscandal and become a patron. There's a bunch of cool rewards at the different tiers, and we can't wait to give you all kinds of cool behind the scenes content.
If you would like to join the argument over whether I did attacked Kurt's nation first, or he attacked my nation first by encroaching on my territory.
Spoiler,
you can
it was her.
It was totally
She
him.
declared war.
You can totally send us
The game
an
has
email
a mode of
at
war or not, and she chose
gmail.com.
surprise war.
So thanks so much, guys, for tuning in tonight. We will see you next Saturday morning for Dungeon World at 9 a.m. here at twitch.tv/Pixel Scandal.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.